Welcome to Smalltalk Daily for Thursday, August 13th, 2009. This morning I'd like to start taking a look through the settings. There are an awful lot of them in the system, so we're going to do this over the course of a couple days. We're going to go to Settings here, and we have an awful lot of things that are optional settings you can play with. Under Look and Feel, that means you can adjust the way the platform looks. So Auto Select means use whatever is native to this platform. I can instead say, well, I really want this to look like XP, so I'll say that, Apply, and you'll notice that the other windows change to kind of an XP-ish look. If I say, well, it's not really what I want, I'd rather just have it auto-select to whatever is native to this platform. I hit Apply, and it's going to go back. And down here, I can ignore Action button double clicks. That would be the right mouse button. You probably typically don't want double clicks with the right button dealt with in any way. Open dialog box is centered at mouse cursor. That's off. Window placement. This is an interesting old-fashioned one. If I hit Apply, not all the windows obey this, but if I go to the GUI builder, notice that it doesn't look like anything happened when I pressed it, and that's because it's asking me, move the mouse, draw a rectangle, and there's my starting canvas. So that will allow me to set this any size I want, instead of the typical thing, which is more common on platforms now. When you hit this, it just gives me some basic default size, which is appearing off screen, but you see there it is. So that's kind of an interesting option. Most people leave this one alone, but it's an interesting one to play with, and if you're a real old-timer in Smalltalk, you might actually prefer by user. Let's go over here to System, and this is one you typically don't need to play with. Sometimes, if you're on Windows, you might need to adjust this to tell the system where the platform is, especially if you install it by hand. If you used an installer, you won't have that problem. Under Loading, this is all the command line options that you can either allow the system to process or not process. That's under your control. So when you're going to a runtime, you may want to build a script that ignores these if that's not something you want the user to be able to do from the command line. Memory policy, this is an interesting one. Growth regime, this is the point where the system will flip over between below this limit, I'll just cheerfully grow memory. Above this limit, I will assume I should garbage collect first. Most systems, 32 meg is not going to be big enough. You probably want to set that bigger. This is the absolute limit on memory. You can set that higher. And free memory is basically a ceiling for how much it's going to ask for every time it tries to grow. Message catalogs you mostly leave alone, and that's something we'd get into in a different screencast. Parcel path, again, you're going to let the system typically set that by going over here to set the home directory. Printing. Now, this is either host or PostScript. It's going to default on the Mac to PostScript. Actually, I think it defaults that way everywhere. Host is supported on Windows and Mac. That means it's going to use native printer stuff, native printer dialogues. On other platforms, you don't get that. You can expand this as well and set various PostScript options. Over here in Source, you typically want to leave this alone because you probably aren't editing exported source code, but if you feel some reason to do that, you could change it. You can also go to source directories and source files. Again, you normally leave this alone. That's something you let the system deal with. Time zones is one you pretty much don't need to deal with anymore. When the system starts up, it should set the system clock based on the operating system, so you can probably leave this one completely alone. Transcript is interesting because this allows you to set what happens with the transcript. You can log everything to a file. If you're running headless, you can log specifically to a different file than this. This is the default. You can send transcript writes to standard out if you're on a platform that's not Windows. And you can send headless transcript to standard out, again, if you're not on Windows. If you're on Windows, you can still do this, but you have to have started the console VM, because the console VM doesn't automatically close standard out and assumes you have a console window in which that stuff can go. So this stuff will work on any platform, the out to standard out, but on Windows you have to have prepared for it. Now, the rest of this stuff I'll go through tomorrow. There's an awful lot of settings here. We'll go through the rest of them tomorrow. In the meantime, have fun with Smalltalk.